All right, welcome on board, everybody. So we're going to get into the GDPR. The whole essence of GDPR is it's an EU data protection law. The intention is to give us a comprehensive data protection law. This was enacted by the European Union in 2018, and the bottom line is that we're saying we should have data protection for individuals in terms of how do we collect our data, all right, store the data, process it, and protect it. Let's go. Everybody, if you don't mind, I would like you to type this if you don't mind, everybody. Do me a favor, just type this real quick. Now, if you get this, honestly, you'll be in a very amazing shape. So let's keep it simple. When we talk about privacy, we are saying, how do you collect my data? Let's type collect real quick. How do you store my data? All right. How do you process the data? And ultimately, what is the mechanism to protect it? Let's go again, one more time. All of us, we share our data all the time. The bank, social network like your Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. The bottom line is you're saying, listen, how are you collecting my data? How are you storing my data? How is it processed? And what are the security or protection around my data? I think those are fair fundamentals to ask, right? So within the European Union also, we said, okay, listen, we have all our members. They are gradually having transaction with a lot of organizations all over the world. Can you all tell us how do you collect our data? How do you store our data? How do you process the data? Now, when we say processing, some of the data, people send it to third party, believe it or not. When we sign that fine print with your social network, Instagram, Facebook, and all those stuff, sometimes you consent to them to share your data to third party. And that's why you get some crazy weird calls, emails from certain agency because we opted in also for them to contact us. Of course, I agree with you. None of us have time to look at all the fine print, right? But this is the reality, right? So it's a big deal. Then also, what are the protection? Let me ask you, let's just think from a second. Forget cyber for a second. If I ask you, what are the ways you can protect my data on, let's say, WhatsApp? Most of us, virtually all of us use WhatsApp. Let me ask you, let's just throw it out there. What do you think, if I ask you, how can you protect my data on WhatsApp? What do you say to me? Just type what you think. Let's go. I love that. You hit the nail. Encryption is a big one. Multi-factor authentication. That's the reality, really. I mean, if we forget anything, I mean, and if you've not done it, please everybody go and set up your MFA on your Facebook, on your WhatsApp. And some of us have been victim of those moments when, um, a lot of attempts have been made to hack your system. So make sure you set up your MFA, set up your make sure your data is encrypted. But those are the big one. Of course, along the line also, we're going to make sure that how do we I like that. Somebody said timeout. That's a good one, King. Some people will set up a timeout, idle session timeout, whereby when you leave your screen idle and you rush to the restroom, before you come back, can somebody just use their camera to take a picture of people's payroll, confidential information? So within certain seconds, the threshold will be automatically to just time out. So it will be blank. So it's a good security mechanism also. I love that. Thank you. Somebody said 2FA. I love that. Same time I said access control. That's another big one, right? Because think about it. Yeah, I love this. Dolakwa, you're awesome. At the end of the day, we're thinking of, okay, what about the password management? How do we manage the password? Are you going to just allow somebody to use password as password? You put PASSWORD. Your system would have been configured to say, I'm not going to allow that kind of password because somebody can guess it easily. If somebody's going to compromise you, give them work to do, right? Don't make it too easy for them, really. Data anonymization, that's another good one. Sometimes people scramble your data so that nobody would understand what kind of data it's there. So that's a good one also. Love it. Okay, this is great. So you can tell already, even without me saying it, honest truth is that we already know some of these things because it's part of our day-to-day task anyway. So we can all agree. Again, let's quickly recap. We're talking of how do you collect my data? How do you store my data? How do you process it? And how do you protect my data ultimately? Okay, good. So what are the key objectives of GDPR, right? One, we're saying it would ultimately enhance the security and privacy for European Union citizens. Now, there's a history to it a little bit, right? In World War II, all of us are aware of the Holocaust that happened, right? So historically, it was a big deal that is being documented as, over 6 million Jews were um, eliminated then, right, in that war. Now, because of that history, going back, they realized the reason it could happen then was because it was easy to target certain demography because of the data. So now we are saying you can't just have access to people's data. No, in the whole of EU member states, you just don't have access to people's data. And if you violate that, the fines are quite crazy. So people take it serious. It's a serious, it's not a joke, right? It's serious stuff. Then, of course, grant data rights. We're saying I have the right to ask you to make correction if there's a mistake in my data, to delete my data from your database. I have a right to do that. So you can't just capture my information and think I can't fight back to ask you to remove it. Also, it ensures accountability. I know what we are all thinking. Well, people can self-regulate themselves. History has not shown us big organization self-regulating themselves. I'm sure you've seen a lot of big players come to Capitol Hill in the US. They have to testify before Congress and talk about why they violated certain rights. So it's a big deal. And sometimes the fines are crazy, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Then, of course, it helps to increase transparency in general. At the end of the day, these laws are passed. Don't, yeah, I know the normal political angle at times is big corporation versus the customer's right. It's a tricky slope. The common conventional wisdom is we should let people self regulate themselves. History has not shown corporation people to be very good at self regulating themselves, right? That's just the reality of it, right? So at the end of the day, yes, self regulate yourself. That's fine. Do you? Okay. But there must also be an independent oversight on you. It's not enough to tell me you want to self regulate yourself. you know um so it's something that we have to understand and say, hey, yeah, self-regulate yourself, but ultimately also there should be an independent oversight. And the European Union is not going to play games really. If you violate, they fine you. The fines are quite expensive too. They don't play games really. It's crazy, really. So what's the scope of an applicability of GDPR, right? It applies to any organization processing data of individual residing in the European Union, regardless of location. It doesn't matter. So you might be a company based in the US. Some of your customers are based in the European Union. Yes, you have to make sure you cover them from a GDPR angle. So we have what we call data controllers and processors also. This covers both organizations that determine the data processing side of things and those that process data on behalf of controllers also. And what are the personal data covered? So any kind of data that can be used to identify an individual directly or indirectly does not matter. So for example, you might tell me, well, all I have is your social security. My name is not there. Well, it ties to my name. So that is the personal identification information. Well, all I have is just your bank record. I don't have your name. Well, it still ties. So anything that can directly ties it back and forth, it's a big deal. There was some years back, I had a project in Germany, in my case, and then they had safe harbor law because you could not just send files of European Union members to the US. Some of us had to physically actually go there to capture the information. So you have to physically go there, because of that regulation, the technicality around it. So we just didn't want to violate that law. So we had to get a team to physically go there. So this is corporation take it serious because the fines are really, really bad. You can really get into big trouble. So people don't mess with it. Now, individual might take a risk. Corporation is not going to take a risk at all because sometimes we are talking of $20 million fine, crazy fine. So people don't, it's not a joke, it's serious stuff, right? What are the key principles? In simple terms, ladies and gentlemen, lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Now we are saying My personal data must be processed lawfully. So it has to be legally collected from me consenting. It has to be fairly collected and transparent. There should be transparency around it, right? The purpose limitation is saying my data must be collected for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes only. So it has to be specified. You have to tell me what is my data being used for in real time. Then data minimization, we're saying only collect and process data that is necessary for the intended purpose. So don't tell me you need my social security number, but you also need my name, my address, my phone number, my email, my next of kin. Dude, you're stretching it. Come on now. What is next of kin? Not just next of kin, the phone number of next of kin. I'm sure some of you have seen some, places they will ask you to fill some forms, and it's quite embarrassing. Some will even tell you, spouse name. Then if there's an emergency, give me emergency contact. They will even say secondary, primary emergency. Then you are wondering, wait a minute, this is more like just tell me to bring my whole family to you, really. Because so sometimes I think it's excessive information, and this is what the GDPR is saying, data minimization. If you don't need the data, then don't even request for it in simple terms. Accuracy is another big one. We're saying the data must be accurate and reflect truth. Where necessary, kept up to date, meaning if my data point changes for any reason, I hope you're also going to make the changes to my data. If there's an error in my data, I can request you make a change to correct it in your database also.